Hello writers, and welcome back to the third installment of my series about writer's block. Today we are going to be exploring, is it writer's block or is it aphantasia? In this video I will go over what aphantasia is, how it can affect your story writing, and go over a few solutions or suggestions or things you can explore to help or substitute the facts that you experience or may experience symptoms of aphantasia. So let's get into it. What is aphantasia? It is defined as the inability to visualize, and some people call it being blind in your mind. Most people can use their imagination to create the pictures in their minds when they're reading, or for example, like looking at text that is meant for like describing things, such as when you read maybe a fantasy book. There's some world building, or like every time a scene changes in any book you read, I guess. If the writer does include description, then people without aphantasia can usually just picture the setting or characters in their mind. But if you have aphantasia, that means you have a reduced ability to, or you might not be able to use pictures in your mind to, piece together or link with descriptions. Aphantasia does exist on the spectrum, which means that not everyone can't see anything, and not everyone only has reduced ability, but that you can have anywhere on a line from being able to visualize to not being able to at all. Many people with aphantasia are actually self-diagnosed because there is no agreed upon criteria for proper diagnosis. So let's think. What can people with aphantasia do to help with their story writing and describing things in their writing? Because if you have aphantasia, you might find it hard as a writer to actually describe your settings or characters or scenes, and that might actually hold you back from writing or feel like you can't actually write because you have this lack of ability that most people do actually have, which is to be able to visualize in their minds and see pictures. So going to number one for my suggestions to explore is, if you don't have visualization, storyboards is fine. So this is to say that you can use inspiration from where you can access it. With the internet, we have a lot of online resources to use, and this means the website Pinterest can be your best friend. Substitute your inability to picture in your head by finding images of things that could be in your world. This gives you something in front of you to actually reference from. Maybe you can Google medieval castle because you have a castle in your world. You can look to its structure, shape, color. Maybe there's some trees around so you can see in the picture. And then you may think the area smells like trees because the trees are there. Maybe in that world they use the trees around the castle for firewood, which means in the castle it may smell like a fireplace. You can make these connections without having to imagine or visualize anything. They are just by pure logic, or like connecting things without the imagery, or without having to imagine it in your mind visually. I hope that makes sense, but essentially you have the image in front of you because you don't need to visualize it in your mind yourself, and you can identify different objects such as trees and then make links logically based on what trees do, they can be used for in the world, as a way of developing sensory properties or qualities such as the smell of an area. You can create boards on Pinterest for different settings, characters, or anything you want to describe in the story as a reference point. There are a lot of nice looking pictures on Pinterest, and it can take a while if certain images don't feel quite right to you, but it's a vast resource to cover a lack of images in your head. I personally don't think I experience aphantasia, but I do like having visual stimuli, which is why I utilize mood boards quite a bit in my writing, or like for my stories. So yeah, it's definitely something I can suggest, and maybe one of the most accessible things you can do to help your aphantasia. For number 2, read other books but take notes. So some people can just think of a book and their setting or characters and see them in their head. And if you experience qualities or symptoms of aphantasia, then you might not be able to do the same, but you can look at another writer's description and use it to your advantage. While reading another person's work or a book, you can write notes while you read when you see an author describing something in their writing. You can write down what sentences they're using and maybe quote the author to break down how they're describing something. You don't need to see it, but you can look into the inner workings of description for writers. By doing this, you can find patterns and inspiration when you need it and when you read, and you're stimulated in other ways that you will start to recognize. So maybe when you read these descriptions and you break it down like this, you may not see the pictures in your head yourself, but there are other ways that I'm sure you can process the actual descriptions like when you normally do read. You can then use these patterns and inspiration to apply it to your own writing, and basically rinse and repeat and practice, and then eventually you'll develop your own practice of description based on, the patterns and trends of other writing. And for my last suggestion of this video, work with themes and not visuals, or well, not visuals in your head. So does whatever you're describing embrace a certain archetype or theme? You can likely find images online relating to it by googling the said theme or archetype. This is similar to my first point, but can help with having some direction. Maybe you have a dark, edgy character and you want to find aesthetic images or just reference images in general for similar characters or pictures that hold the same vibes. You can look for the keywords held in these visuals and maybe visit a thesaurus. Do the images have a common theme of pointy objects? Find words that are gripped with that. Now you can describe an edgy character's actions with those of pointy words. Maybe they have sharp movements, they are keen, you can describe something as sharp-edged, maybe they're intense, or they're very exact with their movements. This is all coming from the theme, or like the archetype of like dark and maybe edgy aesthetics or imagery or references. And you can use the power of association in words instead of images in order to develop descriptions in your writing. It can even work with locations. So maybe if a location is dark and edgy, there are like pointy objects or things that are typically of that nature around the place that helps develop the atmosphere and the description and scene setting of that area. I do have some further reading that I found that I will link in the description if you want to read that. And yeah, hopefully what I talked about today might be helpful to you if you experience aphantasia or actually just want some more visual stimulation when it comes to your writing. Any of these tactics can be used by anyone, not just people with aphantasia, and it can let you dive deeper into description and enhancing your ability. So next time you're thinking of writer's block, and maybe if you do fit the description of having aphantasia qualities or symptoms of it, think, is it writer's block or is it aphantasia stopping you from writing what you love? Really, when you write your first draft anyway, you don't need to write everything and all the descriptions. You can even start with a skeleton. So if you're at the point of, writing your first draft and stopping yourself, focus for now on the skeleton. It's okay if you do a lot of telling in your first draft, because you can fix this up in your second draft or following drafts using some of these techniques I talked about to help build up and fluff up your descriptions, I suppose. Add more fat to your writing and, it can be developed over time, and there's no need to rush into descriptions if you feel like you can't because of something stopping you, if it's aphantasia, for example. But yeah, aphantasia can stop writers, and the reason I'm recording this is because I've had a few discussions with people who do have aphantasia and experience it and feel like they can't write because of it. Hopefully this video will help you out in any case. As usual, you can check me out on Twitch each Saturday where I stream productivity writing streams to get work done, talk writing and listen to lo-fi music. It's at 10 PM in Australian Eastern Time, but if you click on the link, you'll be able to find the time converted to your time zone in the schedule tab. Thank you for watching, and I hope you join me for another video, probably coming on Wednesday, or maybe Tuesday in your time zone. We'll see. But thank you for watching. Bye!